What it is, my 10 Piece and Grease here, bringing you another vid, and this is going to be Hot Topic number 4, where I'm actually discussing my thoughts and opinion on DevStream 118. Now, there was a pretty good amount of content covered. I'm not going to actually show any of the DevStream. If you're wanting to see that, go to Play Warframe All One Word on YouTube. They've got some really great content, so it's definitely worth the perusal. They actually have some various prime frame trailers that I highly recommend. Some really good trailers. Definitely worth a look. So let's get to the big points first. Now, DE doesn't like to give specific release dates, but suffice it to say they said they are shooting for November 1st for Fortuna dropping on PC. Now, this is just kind of a bracket date. It's the date they're shooting for. So could be November 1st, could be November 15th, could be November 5th, or anything in between. It's hard to say. And now if you're on console like myself, I always give them about a good buffer. About a month is usually what I recommend to people. And the reason I do this is quite simply, if you budget a month for getting an update, if you get it before, yay! If you wait the full month, then you expected it. Versus a lot of people who say, oh, we'll get it a week later, or oh, we'll get it 2 weeks later. No, then you're just kind of setting yourself up for disappointment. So I always say, give it about a month. If you get it before that, hey, win-win, right? If you get it in a month, hey, you expected it. So, no harm, no foul. Now, obviously, once Fortuna does drop on PC, there's bound to be quite a few bugs and glitches. So you figure by the November 1st, if they actually meet that date, they're going to have to actually release patches to fix some of those bugs and glitches, and that patch will release on to PC, which will be just automatic for the update for those of us on console. Just something to keep in mind. So let's talk. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about a lot of the cosmetics. Cosmetics are all well and good, as you can see. I like cosmetics as much as the next person. But I'm more interested in content since we have kind of been in a content drought. Don't get me wrong. The Hallowed Nightmares, it's fun. The Pyrus project was nice. It was a nice little change. But I'm really wanting some meat and potatoes. You know what I mean? So I'm not going to spend a lot of time covering a lot of the cosmetics. Suffice it to say, there is an Atlas Deluxe skin, and it's okay. If you like it, then that's all that matters. Me personally, they're using this same type of floaty appendage mechanic that they did on Mag's Deluxe skin, where her arms are kind of detached from the rest of her body. That type of idea. They're using Revenant's kind of what looks like, or at least very similar to Revenant's default helmet, which you guys already know how much I loathe that default helm. Yes, in case you're wondering, the Revenant alt helm is available on alerts, so that's where I got mine. So keep your eye out on those alerts if you are looking for the alternate helmet for Revenant. It is out. Just a warning for you guys, if you're wondering what's the next to be vaulted, from what I'm understanding, Banshee Prime is going to be the next to be vaulted, as well as Helios Prime and Euphona Prime. Now, this is getting really interesting, because once Helios Prime vaults, that means that every Prime Sentinel is vaulted. So if you're needing Sentinels, I highly recommend you get them now, because once Helios vaults, that's it. All Prime Sentinels will be vaulted at that point. Euphona Prime, get it now. Fantastic weapon. One of my favorite secondaries, in fact. Hits like a Mack truck. If you like the shooting mechanics and the mag capacity and reload, it's well worth using. In fact, I much prefer it over the Piranha. Personal preference, but hey, to each their own. Just something to keep in mind going forward. They did briefly touch on more operator cosmetics, as well as some changes to operator hair. If that's kind of your bag, if that's your thing, hey, you guys can celebrate. Me personally, I don't really see anything as far as operator cosmetics that would get me to change from my current operator at this point. The way that my current operator set up is very akin to what I would call kind of Umbra, with like those little appendages sticking out from them. I don't really see anything that's in the operator cosmetics that's actually going to make me change my current operator cosmetics. So again, to each their own, just something to keep in mind. Now, really good news to report, they are actually currently working on changing the way the menu for the arsenal works in regards to adding an optional focus lens selection. So down here you would actually be able to choose your focus lens. So you choose a frame, you choose a focus lens, and you're good to go, which actually this could be a really, really good thing. Something that I think could personally be a really good thing. Now that brings me to Garuda. First and foremost, doesn't that sound like a type of cheese? Like, I'll have the ham and Garuda with some extra Garuda, please. Yeah, let me get the nachos with the Garuda cheese. Lots of the Garuda cheese, right? I don't know, that just, every time I hear Garuda, I guess I think of Gouda, and I automatically think of cheese. I don't know, hey, but that's what it reminds me of. So, as far as her appearance goes, Garuda looks great. I think she looks fantastic. She really does. She looks great. So no, I can't throw any shade in that direction. Her abilities, I hate to be one of those negative people, and I'm certainly not trying to be negative, because Garuda's abilities just kind of seem like a hodgepodge mixture of a lot of other Warframe abilities. For example, we're looking at a Volt Shield. We're looking at a Nezha Spike. We're looking at a Nova kind of, explosive orb. We're looking at a very Harrow or other. There are a couple other frames that will sacrifice health or shields to boost other abilities, as well as a Revenant type of fourth, where you do this kind of spinny, floaty thing around, where dealing damage in the area. So it seems like a really big kind of hodgepodge mixture of abilities on other frames. I'm really kind of soured on Revenant's fourth. As I said in one of my hot topic, I think it was number 3, where I talk about Revenant a little bit. I just never used Revenant's fourth ability, and since Garuda's fourth ability seems very similar to Revenant's fourth, it doesn't seem like an ability I'm going to use very often. But all of those things aside, I would say that, and again, keep in mind, this was a dev build, so anything and everything can change on Garuda at this point. But I would say the biggest problem I personally see was it seemed like her damage buff drained way, way, way too fast. Now, it was really hard to see the damage buff and how long it stayed around and how fast it drained, but it seemed like the damage buff, when you sacrificed your health, it just seemed like the damage buff just boom, 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 boom. It was just clicking away, and you were losing it just second by second by second by second. So my biggest criticism, it seems like the damage buff bleeds off, pun intended, get it, bleed off. Anyway, it seems like the damage buff just bleeds off way, way, way too fast. That damage buff should be sticking around far longer than what it is, particularly since you're giving up half your health. That damage buff should stick around for, I would say at least for a certain amount of time until you get that amount of health back. But that's my biggest criticism. As it stands now, Garuda definitely seems like a frame you're going to end up using like her first or her third, or her first or her second. It just seems like before she's even launched, she's going to be a two-trick pony, where you're going to end up using like 2 of her abilities and then forgetting the rest. And she hadn't even been released yet. So that's really kind of sad to see, and really kind of sad to hear that we're already picking out, like, these are the 2 abilities you're going to use most, and the other 2 you're just never going to use. And she hasn't even been released. I think that's pretty telling, if nothing else, that the Warframe community, we've kind of seen these abilities surface time and time again, and we've just gotten used to being able to say, okay, well, this is an ability I'll never use, and these are the abilities I will use. So, yeah, again, I'm not trying to be negative. I'm hopeful that some changes will occur. I know there are some other content creators out there that have made suggestions about Garuda, as well as posted some of their thoughts and opinions about Garuda thus far. So hopefully some changes do occur. But let's move on past Garuda and talk about her weapon. She is going to get a crossbow weapon now. First thing that's really kind of important to point out here is if you're not familiar with the crossbows that already exist in the game of Warframe, the first one is the Zooge. And the Zooge is a very, very, very good crossbow. Along with it is the Attica. Now the Attica, again, is a very, very, very good crossbow. Both the Attica and Zooge are fantastic crossbows. And in case you didn't know, if you were getting ready to hop into a sortie that is bow only, yes, you can take the Attica, and yes, you can take the Zooge. Since they're crossbows, they are considered bows, and you can use them on bow sorties, bow only sorties. And these are fantastic crossbows. If the Attica and the Zooge are any indication of how good Garuda's crossbow will be, yeah, it's going to be pretty doggone good. Again, just jumping to that conclusion, although it did sound as though it was a semi-auto, so it seemed like you were going to have to constantly hit the trigger over and over and over again, which is not really a good thing considering the Attica and Zooge are kind of full auto, so you don't have to constantly smack the trigger nonstop. That seems like the only negative, and I could be wrong. It may be semi-auto, maybe it's a burst fire crossbow. I don't know. We haven't got it yet. And again, these things are subject to change, so it's hard to say. They did briefly touch on the Nyx rework, and it definitely sounds like they're actually doing something a little bit more with Nyx this time around versus what they did with Vauban. Vauban, obviously, his rework. If you checked out my thoughts and opinions on my Hot Topics number 3, then you kind of know my opinion of the Vauban rework. But it sounds like with Nyx, they're actually taking this a step further, and that's a good thing. Hopefully they can get Nyx up to a good spot. Again, I say hopefully. Time will tell. We will see. They did talk about some of the changes coming to Titania. Again, I don't think this is a bad thing. I think this is a good thing. And for you guys that are fans of Titania, hopefully you guys are really hyped and excited to see what they do with her. So moving on, let's talk about some of the pet changes. They commented on pet changes, and I really, really, really hope this includes Sentinels. Several dev streams ago, this was months and months ago, they actually touched on these changes to these little guys. In fact, they said prior to releasing the MOAs that they were going to make changes to the companions, pets, and MOAs to bring them up to the level of the current content as well as the near future content that we're getting in Warframe. Sentinels definitely need some changes. They already know that the majority of the Sentinels are used quite a bit versus pets, so I hope that doesn't detract from the argument that they do need changes, because they do. They most definitely do. I mean, even if you sink a ton of formula like myself into your Sentinel and your Sentinel weapons, they are just really kind of pointless besides whatever they're passive. For example, Helio Scan and stuff. About the only benefit to using them is to proc status effects on enemies is really kind of the big thing right now. Once you get them into, and understand I'm referring to high level content. Once you get your Sentinels into high level content, especially with the boss, they're just going to one shot your Sentinel no matter how much forma you have in them. So I'm hoping that they do buff the Sentinels as well as the Sentinel weapons, because they certainly do need it, and they don't just ignore them and focus on the pets. Now, I agree that the pets do need them, and thankfully, after years of asking for Univac or Universal Vacuum, they are releasing a mod, a fetch mod for the pets specifically, the Kavats and the Kubros, which will act like vacuum on the Sentinels. And so it seems like you're finally getting that on your pets. So you're going to have more of a reason to run your beasties versus your Sentinels. So that's a good thing. That's excellent to hear. Those are definitely really good changes to be made. Speaking of pet MOAs, unfortunately, when they were actually scrolling through the pet MOA option, there was a guild option. Oh, no, DE, please, this guild nonsense has got to go. The guild feature should be optional. Period. The end. End of discussion. And so, I mean, there's no. I'm just assuming at this point, once Fortuna drops, there's going to be some type of new ZAW strikes that are going to appear. There's probably going to be some new amp parts that probably appear, as well as the secondaries are going to be very ZAW-like. And then you're going to have the MOAs, and there's probably going to be a couple amp parts. And now you're telling me, and who knows, even K drives at this point may have a guild feature once you build a K drive. In case you didn't know, that's kind of the surfboard, roller skate, kind of Back to the Future skateboard type of deal that you're going to be using in Fortuna. But enough with the guild. Here's my problem with guild. This is my big problem. This is my big problem with guild here. So as it exists now, the guild feature in regards to ZAWs and amps is where's the ZAW? Okay, for example, this Rad B. So I built this Rad B, and by level 9, the first time, I knew I hated it. I hated this ZAW. I knew as soon as I got it MR ranked up and gilded and MR ranked up again, I'm going to get rid of it just ASAP as soon as it's done, because I hated it. And I knew this before level 9. But once I get to level 30, I'm forced to gild a weapon I know I hate and I know I will never use just to get the MR. This is nonsensical. What should be occurring here is the guild feature should be optional. For example, if I'm building, let's say my Zossam here, my Plague Crippeth, for example, I knew from the get-go by level 9 when I built this and started using it that I loved this thing. And I knew from the get-go I was going to keep it and gild it and actually use it. The guild feature should be optional on this, so that once I get a weapon or build or construct a weapon I like and know that it's good, I can then gild it and continue to get those perks, those benefits from gilding it. But bottom line, the first time you get these weapons or amps or secondaries or MOAs or ZAWs or K drives or whatever else they're going to decide to throw this ridiculous guild feature on, even if you hate it and you know you're never going to use it and you can't wait to get rid of it, you're still forced to gild it and get it to level 30 all over again just to get the MR. And that's just nonsense. This needs to be changed ASAP. You should, the first time you get a weapon or amp or ZAW or K drive or MOA or secondaries, once you get them to 30 the first time, boom, you should get the MR. Then if the weapon's still good enough that you are actually enjoying it and using it, then you have the option to gild it, and you get the perks and the benefits from gilding it, and it has nothing to do with MR. But forcing us to level a weapon twice that we know we hate, for example, amps. There were several amps that I built that I knew I hated. By level 9, I knew I hated them, and I had to continue to level them to 30 just so I could gild them and then level them all over again just so that I could delete them as soon as I was done, just so that I could do nothing more than just get the MR from them. That's ridiculous. So please, DE, make the guild feature optional. Forcing us to have to gild them just to get the MR and level them twice just to get the MR is just ridiculous. It's nonsense. It's got to go. I can't stress this enough how ridiculous this truly is. So let's move on to Fortuna. Now, Fortuna is actually looking really good. It's looking really great. Some of the screenshots, some of the gameplay footage they showed actually looks really, really good. I'm actually really excited about it. Obviously, we all are. We've been in a content drought for a while, so we're excited for any content. But even with my high hopes tempered, I'm still really excited about how good Fortuna does look. Now, they are making some changes to fishing and mining coming up with Fortuna, which I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but we'll have to see how it plays out. But the important part, one of the biggest annoyances in Plains of Eidolon was the fact you can only get one bounty, and then you took it out to the plains, you completed said bounty, only to have to come all the way back into Cetus and wait for that load screen and then get in there just to get a second bounty, just so you could go back through the door and wait for the load screen and go back. It was a huge annoyance, okay? Thankfully, it seems like the bounty giver is actually outside the gates of Fortuna. What this means is when you're wandering around free world on Fortuna, you can run to the bounty giver, collect your bounty, go out, complete it, come right back. No doors, no elevators, no load screens, none of that annoying kind of BS. So that's definitely a good thing. As far as the depth of Fortuna, at this point, we still haven't seen any. I really kind of hope that they actually added some depth to Fortuna, some really interesting kind of side quests and some really interesting kind of features, some really kind of interesting interactions is what I'm really hoping for Fortuna, because Plains of Eidolon was really shallow. In fact, if you checked out my video, The Plains Has a Problem, I kind of cover some of those bases, but hopefully Fortuna is going to be, that's going to be changed. Now, in Fortuna, they did show some new style Corpus units, as well as they have some new features. They even have, wait for it, flying nullifiers. Now, whoever at DE came up with flying nullifiers, they must have laughed maniacally when they came up with that idea. It definitely sounds interesting. It definitely sounds fun, having some of these new mechanics. So it's yet another thing that I'm really excited about. So Railjack, in case you didn't know, Railjack is actually separate from Fortuna. Railjack's going to come out later. We probably won't see it till next year, sometime 2019. But it is something to put on your calendar and something to keep in mind. Get your Archwing gear ready, because you're going to need your Archwing equipment for Railjack. So if there's particular mods that you're looking for, particular gear that you're looking for, at some point you're going to want to put that on a calendar and start actually grinding for that stuff, because with Railjack you're going to need it. Now, they did also mention that they're going to be adding some more Archwing missions, as well as potentially some different mods. So we'll have to see how that plays out. I don't know yet. It's hard to say. If it's just the Archwing missions are just kind of more of the same, I don't know. Archwing isn't really popular at this point, so I don't know if it's really something that we're going to be spending a lot of time in, but we'll have to wait and see. So those are my thoughts and opinions on DevStream 118. What do you guys think? Are you tired of this whole guild mechanic? Are you guys excited for Fortuna? What are you most looking forward to? Let me know what you're thinking, because I want to know what your thoughts and opinions are. And until next time, peace and grace.